Reciprocals and inverse numbers. Now, in this chapter, we're going to play around with numbers to understand how numbers actually work. Let's say you have a number like this. This concept called inverse means to turn the number upside down, simply. Let me explain this way. Whenever you see a number, two things you must always remember. If it doesn't have a sign, it's the same thing as saying plus 2. It means that it's positive. But normally we don't put this plus, always hide it. Now, whenever you also see a whole number like 2, it's also the same thing as saying 2 divided by 1, because once you divide it, you still have 2. So just imagine that a number like this or this has a divided by 1 under, but we won't write it. So the inverse now means to turn the number upside down. So when you have a number like 2, the multiplicative inverse now becomes 1 over 2. You turn it upside down. 3, the multiplicative inverse, it's same thing as saying 1 over 3. Just turn the number upside down. This one goes up, this one comes down, and that's 1 over 3. Okay, so when you have a number like this, minus 5 over 2, the multiplicative inverse, or also call it the reciprocal, is the same thing as minus 2 over 5. You retain the sign, minus 2 over 5. Just turn it upside down. Okay, so for a number like 1 over 6, the multiplicative inverse, multiplicative inverse, or also call it reciprocal, will now become, turn this number upside down, it becomes 6 over 1, which is the same thing as 6. Okay, now let's look at an example for multiplicative inverse. Now this is a junior WAEC question, and it goes this way: that if the reciprocal of 40 is 0.025, what should be the reciprocal of 50? Okay, if the reciprocal of 40 is 0.025, what is the reciprocal of 50? The reciprocal of 50 is same thing as turning 50 upside down, and that is 1 over 50. 1 divided by 50, we'll now express it in decimals, just like this. So 51. 50 divided by 1, it won't go. So put a point and add 0 to it. 50 divided by 10, it won't go. We'll add a 0 and add a 0 here too. Then 100 divided by 50, what can multiply 50 to give you 100? And that's 2. So 2 times 50 gives you 100. When you subtract, that's also an answer for this question. The reciprocal of 50 now becomes 0.02. So that's how to solve that question. Now let's take another question. This is a junior WAEC question, and it says the reciprocal of 0.08 is 12.5. The reciprocal of 80 then is what? So reciprocal of 80 is the same thing as saying 80 over 1, and its reciprocal now becomes 1 over 80. So we'll now divide this. 81. 1 divided by 80, it will go. Put a point. Now there's 0 here. So 10 divided by 80, it won't go. We'll add a 0 and add a 0. 100 divided by 80 will give us 1. 1 multiplied by 80, we have 80. When you subtract, you have 20. We'll add another 0. 200 divided by 80, what number can you multiply by 80? That's a 2. 2 times 80 gives us 160. 200 minus 160 gives us 40. So add also another 0. Then what number will you multiply by 80 to give you 400? And that's the 5. 5 times 80 will give you 400. So this is the final answer. So the reciprocal of 80 now becomes 0.0125. If you don't understand this one, please pause, rewind, and follow the division process again to understand it. Now we also have what we call additive inverse. Additive inverse. Now this simply means changing the sign. Let's say you have a number like this, 2. The inverse, additive inverse of 2, this is plus 2, automatically is minus 2. So that when you do plus 2 minus 2, it gives you a 0. So additive inverse of a number means a number that you add to that number to make it 0. So additive inverse of minus 3 is plus 3. So it's as simple as changing the sign. Additive inverse of minus 4 is 4. Additive inverse of 10 is minus 10. So it's very easy, just as easy as that. Now let's take another example. What is the multiplicative inverse of minus 1.50? What is the multiplicative inverse of minus 1.50? So the multiplicative inverse is same thing as turning this upside down. Now to turn it upside down, it's easier for us to do it as a fraction. So minus 1.50 is same thing as, this 0 is not a single number, it's same thing as saying minus 1.5. Okay, so to convert this a fraction, we'll say minus 1.5. Now these points, where that point starts, we'll put a 1 there, then other decimal places now becomes 0. Okay, now so we now have minus 1.5 over 10, which is same thing as, when you cancel this, 5 into 10 will give you 2 here. So that's same thing as say minus 1 over 2. Okay, so when you convert this to an improper fraction, 2 times 1 gives you 2, and 2 plus this 1 gives you 3. So it's same thing as saying minus 3 over 2. So now the inverse now becomes, when you turn it upside down, now becomes minus 2 over 3. So this is our multiplicative inverse. You can go ahead to convert this to a fraction by dividing. Keep the minus aside, and 3 into 2. So when you divide, you get your final answer if you want to express it as a decimal. Okay, so this is our final answer, minus 2 over 3. That is the inverse. Okay, now at this point I want to click on start quiz and take and answer all the questions for this chapter.